I had the displeasure, or whatever, however I would describe it, of working for a professional sports team during a lockout. In 1998, I worked for the Golden State I was working for the Golden State Warriors, and we had that lockout, and we had the truncated season and all that. But here's what I do know. As soon as the lockout was reached and everyone was, well, David Stern won and the owners won, what the owners will always do in the NBA, NFL, and baseball, they will always break their own rules. As soon as they get some type of cost control agreement in the CBA, there's going to be 2-3 Maverick owners that just bust that wide open. Same thing happened with that lockout. The deal there was, that's when it came up with the slotted salaries for the rookies and all that. And within a year, salaries exploded. The owners are using the players to police themselves. And whatever agreement is reached, the owners are going to bust it with the salaries, period.
Yeah. I think a lot of this, and I'm sure you would agree, is about the players just want to get to arbitration earlier. They want to get to free agency earlier. That there's no reason why, like, Vlad Guerrero, who's like one of the best players of the last 10 years, should be making like just $7 million when is one of the best players in the league, but because of the way the rules are. And then, there's the elimination of the middle class. Have you seen this stat? I wrote this down last night. I think it's amazing. In fact, Randy Carricker and I were talking about it. 33 players are making 51% of the money, of the $10 billion in salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So, well, here is
what's the league minimum?
$570,000.
Okay.
And so if the owners insist on keeping control for 6 years, then the players should counter. Well, let's raise the minimum salary. If it's $570 now, how about the minimum salary is $750? Here's the biggest thing for me. Because of what MLB did by disassociating themselves with their minor leagues, they're no longer, they reduced it by 40-some-odd teams. In the CBA, there should be some type of buyout for guys in the minor leagues. Not everyone makes the big leagues. If you sign, for instance, out of high school and you go immediately to the minor leagues and you play a couple of years, and for whatever reason you don't make it to the big leagues, then you should get some type of buyout, some type of money where you can land on your feet and start your life. Some guys go straight from high school to the minor leagues. They don't make it. They didn't go to college. What do they have to fall back on?
That's a choice, though.
It is.
That's a personal choice to do so.
But look out for those players, because the guys in the big leagues, they're going to make their money.
They're not going to do that, though. I mean, we talk about the little things that even NFL owners could be doing to protect their assets, which are the players, providing a number of programs to help them learn how to invest, parenting, all the things that a lot of these kids are just not equipped with once they hit the league. They touch the rookies one time when they come in and that's it, and you expect them to adhere to all these policies? No, I mean, because there's too much money flying around.
You're right.
They're invincible to everything else.
All right, another couple of quick topics here. NFL thought. Do you think there's a possibility, because Aaron Rodgers has become such a controversial figure, that he's not going to win the award he should win? Because Aaron Rodgers is the best football player on the planet Earth. He really is. He's 23 touchdowns, 4 picks, best team. He's the most valuable, because if he's not on that team and loves playing quarterback, we saw what that looked like. I wonder if because of this, and because many people think he's a horse's ace, they won't vote for him, which is wrong.
I think that's very possible. I think it's very possible.
It's happened before in some voting.
Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me if it happens again.
Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, on a related issue, he didn't get suspended. We got guys who got suspended, Antonio Brown and whoever else. There's a couple other guys for that fraudulent COVID.
Vax card.
What's the difference? I mean, how is what Aaron Rodgers did versus what Antonio Brown did.
It's
How
deception.
is that?
Yeah, it was
It's
deception.
deception.
Yeah.
And he should be punished for it as a result. Deception is deception no matter how you look at it.
And yeah, that's my whole point. I mean, so why choose these guys and let this guy alone?
And you raise a good point. And that's why there's so many inconsistencies as to how they legislate punishment across the board. And that's a problem that I have with it. So you worry about a guy like CeeDee Lamb in his uniform. You're finding him every week.
God.
That's just stupid.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
What do you make of Mac Jones, who you saw up close and personal in college, like just so effective, and he may lead that team to a Super Bowl? What do you think?
He's a guy that he paid his dues at Alabama and took advantage of his opportunity when his time came. And I think, listen, you have to give credit to the system that Nick Saban has in place. Even though he manages to switch coaches around, they still buy into what he's teaching. And he manages to go out and find the best assistant coaches to plug into his system. And as a result...
That's a great point about the assistant coach.
As a result, you're seeing tremendous play at the positions where it counts the most. Wide receiver, quarterback, along the defensive line. They've struggled a little bit defensively this year, but... He will, as long as he's there, Nick's always going to continue to churn out top players that can produce for the University of Alabama.
Howard, when you heard the figure $790 million, not $1 billion, not a team, and no trial for Stan on the stand, your reaction was what?
Actually, we did talk about it a little bit, but I think it was the best possible situation for the city of St. Louis. If you risk taking this thing to trial, which I don't think anyone wanted to for a number of reasons, you risk getting nothing out of this. So taking a settlement, St. Louis will recognize after attorney's fees a tremendous windfall of over $500 million. I think that's a win for the city, especially if the monies are divided and used for things that are truly needed here.
Craig?
Well, we did talk about it. The money, here's the thing, and we have to remember, if this thing had gone to trial, St. Louis probably would not have gotten $790 million. It probably still would have prevailed at trial. But, the NFL, they have capable lawyers, too. They would have subpoenaed or requested certain documents from the folks who run the Dome. Here's the thing we all have to keep in mind. The Rams did submit to the Dome a proposal that would have kept them in St. Louis. It was the $700 million upgrade to the Dome.
Yeah.
The city turned the Rams down. Had the Rams at that point said, okay, we're out. We got 2 more years here. We're out. There would be no trial at all. But they did have an argument to make because they did give the city the proposal. So if that goes to trial, you may not get $790 million.
I didn't see the proposal. I don't know what was in it. I don't know if, the people on the side of the city, if they looked at that proposal as actually viable. Did you see it?
Well, I didn't read all of it, but there was a proposal on the table. The Rams submitted to the Dome Authority what it would take to keep them here.
It only locked them in for a 10-year lease. That's the big thing when you look at it. Why it didn't make sense for St. Louis to put in $800 million for renovations that only would have gotten them a 10-year lease.
And then,
plus, it's flawed. Yeah. And you want to put a lot into something that's never going to be great. And that's a lot of money to put into something that's never going to be great.
I agree with that. And here's another argument the Rams could have and the league could have made. Well, if you didn't have the $700 million to upgrade the current stadium, and at the very last minute, now you come up with a $1.2 billion stadium proposal, well, that means you had the money all the time. All along you had the money. So, again, not going to trial benefited everyone, so we should take this money and run and be happy.
Okay, so what do you do the city is going to get about $132 million. The county is going to get about $132 million, and then the sports regional authority is going to get the rest. What if you were in charge? What would you want to do? I think one of the things you have to do is to improve the dome for convention centers, because that is a financial big windfall for the city if you're booking conventions. You do, and you've got to continue to book those. I mean, there have been a number of organizations that have canceled as a result of the dome not being up to par compared to other cities. Exactly. So that money there needs to be an infusion of cash to do those things. The other thing is you really have to address safety and security in downtown St. Louis. Does that mean adding more police officers? I think that is, there's a tremendous shortage. I think last time I heard well over 100 officers. Okay. And that's significant. So that has to be, to me, addressed and addressed very quickly. Because if you don't have that, if people don't feel safe, they're not going to come either, no matter how much money you put into infrastructure upgrades. You still gotta figure out the roads. The roadways are horrible in the city in some places. Listen, my mother lives in a house that I grew up near the Halls Ferry Circle. Just a couple of years ago, they finally paved this thing. Wow. Okay, finally improved it after almost 50 years. There hadn't been any work done there. So, and I understand it. You don't have the funding to do it. You don't. But now there is money to address those needs. I live downtown. And so I'm like in the middle of what goes on there. Extra police or additional police, visibly, yes, that would make people feel safer to see more police. That would not necessarily stop crime, but a presence of police would make people feel safer, but it won't address the root causes of crime. Which is? Okay. Now we're really going deep. Yeah, we are. Now, you should have. Why didn't you bring this up the last hour? The show's only an hour. Right. If you had brought this up the last hour, you've gotten a very fiery conversation. I'll say this. Root causes, poverty, poor public schools, lack of opportunity, lack of hope. But the one thing you didn't bring up? What was that? Is the family. Well, if you are broke, if you have a family, there are a lot of families, but if they're living in poverty, it doesn't matter if the mother, father, sister, brother, kids are all together. If there is no money there, if there is no opportunity to improve your personal situation, so this money won't solve any of that. But don't you think that that's like the biggest problem in the whole country, not just the city of St. Louis and crime, is that there's not that one parent or two parent that strong leader in the household, and we just got a bunch of rotten parents. Listen, I agree somewhat, but again, if there is no structure for a family, and if you look at the root causes of why we have fractured families, especially in the inner city, then we're getting someplace. But you can window dress the police, yes, and we do need more. But again, when you look at the root causes, and we all run from those, but yeah, I just don't think the money will have a significant effect on reducing crime. It would certainly have an effect on arresting people, and if you break the law, you should be arrested, yes. But it won't prevent anything from happening. That investment, it's not just in physical, personnel, security officers. There's security technology that's available that can go a long way to help reduce crime. The disintegration of the nuclear family, that's a whole other social issue that I don't think we can get into on the show. But to that point, there are a lot of single parent households, single mothers, single fathers that have done a good job of absolutely. Yeah. So it is an issue that has to be addressed, but I think it also stems from education. Craig touched upon it, the situation with the public schools, children not being educated at an earlier age, the whole prison to pipeline situation, 8 years of age is when these kids need to be impacted with all the support services.
to avoid that that road. So there are any number of things. We talked about it last night at our NFL Players Association, Retired Players Association chapter meeting last night, and what our group hopes to do with regard to fundraising from the nonprofit side that we have, to try to help raise monies, work with various corporations that are willing to match funds to provide mentoring and tutoring in schools where it's needed most. So those types of things, if you can pour money into those areas, recreation facilities that are lacking or don't exist here, those to me are good starts, because people have to have a place to go. Kids have to have the place to go after school, to keep them occupied and engaged, to keep them away from the temptations that they face on a daily basis.
If defunding public education got as much pushback and attention as defunding the police, we would be in a lot better position. Public education has been defunded over the last 50 years, and everyone seems to be okay with that. And so
I'm not okay with it.
Neither am I. I went to public school.
So did I.
So
I'm a product of St. Louis Public.
So am I. And, well, anyway, we have a little history in St. Louis, and one St. Louis public school in particular. But anyway, so if we can get as worked up about defunding public education as we do defunding the police, that would be a very good beginning.
I'm not saying it has to be a nuclear family where the father works at the bank and the mom's a nurse and you have a white picket fence and everything. I'm saying the biggest problem with the whole thing is that we don't have enough parents, either it's a single parent or two parents, that are vigilant about raising their kids and it's not making it the most important thing in their lives. Yeah. Let me give you a quick little story. This week on Sunday night on Sports Plus, we're doing one of the longest stories we've ever done, and it's about this wide receiver at St. Louis U High named Chris Brooks, who's going to Yale. His father was a great player at Hazelwood East, played at Nebraska, and played in the NFL. Well, the father and the mother, they got pregnant when she was heading into her junior year of high school. And you could have either, given the baby up or just been terrible parents. Instead, this young man, Chris Sr., played football, went to practice, and then worked at Denny's at night and got a 4.0 and got this full scholarship. The mother went to college for 10 freaking years and got 3 degrees. But the number one thing on their list was always their little boy, to make sure that they were setting the right example. Now, they had a good support system because they had grandparents involved, but that kid is a 4.0 student going to Yale. He's on one of the ambassadors at St. Louis U High, and we need parents like this. I don't want to overstate the obvious, but that's why that kid's successful, because they had a mom and dad who cared.
And they had the tools. They had it takes a village, and they had that. And unfortunately, there are many others that don't have the same support system. They don't have that quote unquote village, and that's why I think from a community standpoint, I think we owe it to our people to provide that for them. And that's why I would love to see more corporate engagement. I mean, there are corporations that do, the Emersons of the world, tremendous worldwide technology. These companies do their part. I would love to see more corporate investment into the community. So let's face it, if you invest in a child, you give that child an opportunity to do an internship or give them a summer job, and you sustain that kid's going to be part of your workforce in the future. If you don't do that, where's the loyalty? They're not going to stick around. They want to get out of here because no one did anything for them.
Exactly.
You give them that vehicle, that opportunity, they will stay here. And I think people need to understand that. And I think we just need to have more of that.
And you can't expect people to believe in the structure when the structure has not been kind to them. Yeah. It looks good. It works for everyone else, but it doesn't work for me. So how can you, ask anyone to buy into something that has not worked for them?
No, it's true. I mean, I think of myself, the opportunities and the paths that I could have taken. Right. Okay, but I'm no different than any other kid that grew up in North City.
Yeah.
Except that I had that village, I had great mentors, and I paid attention, because I knew what the alternative was.
Right.
getting my parents on my backside. I didn't want that, so I wanted to do the right thing. But again, it's a little different here. I mean, public schools were a little better then. Probably a lot better then, of course. And teachers care. Not to say that teachers don't care now, but I think they're just so handcuffed in so many areas. I mean, why should a teacher have to spend money on school supplies?
That was unheard of when we went to St. Louis public schools.
Yeah,
and while there's a lot of room for improvement, I think it should be said, how much the St. Louis City Public Schools has actually jumped up over the last 5 years. They actually have a superintendent who's been there longer than 9 months, which was like the case for like 20 years.
Speaking of Kelvin Adams, my fraternity brother.
Everyone would go like 9 months in, and then they'd resign or get fired. Now there's actually a superintendent who's been there for like 7 years. The test scores are higher than they've been in 20 years. The attendance is higher than it's been in like 25 years. I mean, they're actually on finally a good uptick. Yeah. If you can get, if something like more funding to a public school system that is clearly doing better work, that could be huge overall.
Well, so he's been there 10 plus years now. And I think the school board foundation is doing a good job. They just still need help. And he has done a number of things, some controversial, but I think, you've closed a lot of schools that are just dilapidated. It costs too much to
keep open.
Yeah, they do. I mean, so I think he's doing the best possible job that he possibly can.
And in no way to diminish from what the job Dr. Adams has done. When he took over St. Louis Public Schools, there was nowhere to go but up. So they had bottomed out. There was no further to the bottom that the district was in. So kudos to him. There is a long way to go, though.
Let me read a couple of texts. Teaching right and wrong doesn't have to come from a classroom. You're right. It's got to come from home. Yeah. Lack of values, lack of two-parent families, no morals being taught, lack of Jesus in people's lives is what is ruining this country. Let's see. Let me read you this text. And I don't think it just applies to hockey. I think it applies to what could happen with baseball and who knows with soccer. I have tickets to go to the Blues game. Don't want to go because downtown is a cesspool. That's what this texter wrote. I wonder, and it really hasn't affected it dramatically, but I wonder if violence and homicides continue to go up, if that could really affect football, baseball attendance, hockey attendance, soccer attendance, Billiken attendance.
I think it will. There is an overall net negative effect of that. People will start to stay away. And until those things are addressed, and you don't want it to get to that point. No, you have to start addressing it now.
How about now?
See this downward spiral. Now's the time to do it.
Because let's face it, if someone wants to visit here, they could come to St. Louis. They don't say, "Well, I'm going to Chesterfield" or "I'm going to Fenton." No, we're going to St. Louis. It is the city that drives the whole metro. And the city is the focal point of the metro. Downtown should be the driver of the whole thing. We have people actively avoiding downtown. We want people to come into downtown.
Well, you remember, as a kid, you guys remember this, Christmas time, this time of year, we all headed downtown to look at the storefronts. And
my goodness.
Decorations.
That Christmas famous bar. Oh, my goodness.
No one thought about crime being an issue down there at that point. But it wasn't sustained, and that's a tragedy.
I don't think I've told you this, but two quick things with my son is the other day he's at SLU Law School and he's leaving the building and he hears a gunshot and he sees Chris's Pancake House, the place right down by Channel 5.
Chris is on the docket.
Yeah, the window is shot down, so he calls it into the cops. And, Dom thought it was just somebody shooting the windows and then going there to get the liquor and the money. But the cops told him, no, there was two cars and they were shooting at each other and it went through the window. Then, last night, 6 o'clock, I'm about to go on the air. He's driving down Highway 40 and he calls me and he says, "Dad, I'm driving right next to your car that was stolen."
No way.
I said, what?
Did he attempt to make a citizen's arrest?
Yeah. I said,
Are you serious?
Yeah. He goes, what should I do? I said, just go home. Don't follow us. Is that unbelievable? I go, you positive? He said, Dad, I've been in your car 1,000 times. I know that's your freaking car. So, jeez.
Well, whoever got you, Frank, they're driving your car around because the guy at Channel 5 told you he saw it.
Yeah. Oh, I had a photographer say, hey, I'm right next to your car. It's on 14th Street.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen it except Frank.
Frank, right. All right.
Unbelievable.
You know what? It may even be out in the parking lot now.
Yeah. Now he's spiking the ball in my face.
Right. Hey, take that, sucker. Yeah.